Part 19. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 181. Orgrim's power of night exploded at this time, and his combat power soared directly to his strongest state. The speed was beyond imagination. Even before Night Owl flapped its wings twice, Orgrim's figure rushed directly to his head. "Let me go down here," Orgrim roared angrily. The warhammer in his hand hit Night Owl's head from top to bottom. Night Owl did not want to be headshot by this famous evil skull crusher. The two wings rushed forward to block his head, and the armed domineering force also burst out. But it was of no use. Orgrim's warhammer struck directly with a huge force on his wings. The next moment, the Night Owl was like a cannonball, and flew out with a hammer from Orgrim. The whole person smashed into a house on another street, completely destroying that house, and also an impact force spread out, and the ground cracked. However, Night Owl is an animal devil fruit user after all, and has awakened his own power ability. His physical fitness is very strong, and he has strong vitality and ability to withstand blows. In the blink of an eye, he emerged from the rubble. Without saying a word, he had no intention of getting entangled with Orgrim. He turned around and wanted to run away. "Cut rice cakes," Katakuri shouted. He threw his hand towards Yasuo. His arm instantly lengthened and turned into a slash, cutting through all the obstacles along the way. The power was very powerful. Yasuo was now "I cursed in my heart, damn it, have you forgotten the blow that bastard Orgrim gave you just now?" Just after you dodged Katakuri's blow, Orgrim's strong figure carried a sledgehammer came to his side. The wrath of the night, a fierce look flashed in Orgrim's eyes. The warhammer in his hand roared out, directly cutting through the darkness of the night, and hit Yasuo's chest with a wisp of white light. Yasuo couldn't dodge, and his whole body was with this hammer blow. Before the man could fly out, a stream of blood spurted out from his mouth. The powerful impact penetrated his body, causing serious injuries to his internal organs. Then Orgrim the warhammer was lifted up very dexterously, and the Night Owl, who was about to be knocked away by the hammer, was glued to the warhammer. Not good. Yasuo was startled and prepared to adjust his posture and quickly get out of this state. But it was too late. Orgrim's warhammer caught him like a rag, drawing a semicircle on his head. In the next moment, he took Night Owl and hit the ground with a hammer. 40. Orgrim said with an evil smile. Poof, Night Owl spit out a mouthful of old blood again, with pieces of his internal organs mixed in it. At this time, he was a little confused, his head was dizzy, stars were shining in his eyes, and he felt that all the ribs in his chest were broken, and a few ribs were even pierced into his internal organs. Seeing Orgrim swinging his warhammer, preparing to strike again and kill him, Night Owl didn't dare to wave anymore. He took out the reheat fruit from his waist and pointed it towards Katakuri. Just threw it out. A flash of anger flashed in Orgrim's eyes, and he didn't have time to hit the hammer, and he pounced directly on the hot fruit. He was very clear in his heart that he was here to grab the Riri fruit, not specifically to kill CP-0's people. Katakuri's face lit up, and his soft arms quickly stretched out and grabbed the hot fruit in the air. Lanjiao, Orgrim kicked out fiercely in the air. A slash exploded out quickly, mixed with a powerful impact, and struck directly on Katakuri's arm, cutting off his arm. The next second, Orgrim stretched out his hand and grabbed the hot fruit that had not yet fallen in the air. But before he could catch it, Katakuri's arm, which he had cut off, fell directly into the air. It turned into a huge fist. Then the fist actually started to burn. "Baked rice cakes!" Katakuri shouted in a low voice. Caught off guard, Orgrim's chest hit the giant fist himself. The figure was directly knocked out of the air by the punch and hit a building. On the high tower, Katakuri grinned, and almost showed his ferocious smile from his scarf. But just when he was about to pick up the hot fruit, his face suddenly changed, and he seemed to have noticed something. Then, his body directly softened. Sure enough, the next moment, roaring machine guns sounded, and countless bullets directly penetrated Katakuri's body. Ha 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 ha, it's so ugly. Orgrim was actually beaten away. The Sphinx pulled her infinite bullet Gatling gun with one hand and fired wildly at Katakuri, then laughed and taunted Orgrim. Orgrim's figure emerged from the tower. He emerged from the ruins and cursed, "You are the only one who talks too much. If you had come earlier, what you would have seen is that I knocked down that CP-0 master with one hammer." At the same time as he finished speaking, Orgrim exerted force on his feet, and his figure rushed towards Katakuri like a cannonball. As for the hot fruit, it had already fallen to the ground, right in the middle of the three of them, but no one grabbed it. At this time, everyone around had already run away crying, how could they dare to participate in the fairy fight between these big guys? Those who didn't run away were already dead. Seeing Orgrim rushing over with his war hammer, Katakuri didn't dare to dodge any more bullets, and quickly recovered his figure. At the same time, his armed domineering energy covered his whole body, and he withstood the whizzing bullets of the Sphinx. There was a metallic collision sound. The Sphinx was also stunned for a moment, then laughed and said, "Let's see how long you can hold on." As she finished speaking, the armed domineering energy in her hand also burst out, and the flying bullets were also covered with the power of dominance. But before Orgrim could reach Katakuri's side, the ground beneath Katakuri's feet changed and turned into soft rice cakes. Awakening, Orgrim was shocked and said. But it soon became clear that although Katakuri's strength has not yet reached its peak, he is still one of the strongest in the sea, and he is Charlotte Linglings. It's normal for a capable general to have awakened his abilities at this time. But what about awakening? It's just a few more hammers. A wall of rice cakes rose up instantly, blocking the Sphinx's metal storm. Katakuri's face also turned slightly pale. It was obvious that he had not awakened this ability for a long time, and using it was very draining of energy. The moment Orgrim fell, Katakuri's arm suddenly expanded. He stood up and transformed into a mace-like state with sharp thorns. Then the armed domineering energy covered it, and Katakuri roared, "Cut and cut the rice cake." The moment the voice fell, Katakuri hit Orgrim. Orgrim's eyes flashed, and the war hammer in his hand condensed a powerful impact, turning into a halo, covering the hammerhead, and with one strike it hit Katakuri's arm. A powerful weapon-colored haki punch burst out instantly, sweeping away everything around him, and the hot fruit that originally fell on the ground was also thrown away. Sven, with quick hands and quick eyes, with a few flickers of her feet, Kes caught up with the hot fruit, grabbed it in her hand, and then made no intention of returning to the battlefield, allowing the impact of the air wave to lift her away, and quickly pulled her away. The distance between Katakuri and Orgrim was widened. At the moment when Orgrim and Katakuri were in a stalemate, Katakuri's eyes flashed red, and then his overlord-colored domineering energy burst out. It came out and swept the entire island in an instant. Countless people who couldn't withstand his overlord's domineering energy instantly passed out, and some of them looked defeated. Only a few big bosses could calmly watch the battle from a distance. However, this overlord's domineering explosion was still not even a moment later. Orgrim's body also surged with a tyrannical aura, which was also the overlord color. The contrast of the overlord color's domineering energy was far more exaggerated than the conflict of the armed color's domineering energy. In an instant, the entire Avalon, the island, was ravaged by the two of them. The stars in the sky quickly dimmed and dark clouds condensed. Gee ha 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 ha, Orgrim burst out laughing. Katakuri was shocked. In this situation, he had gone all out, but Orgrim could still laugh calmly. "Open," Orgrim roared. The sledgehammer in his hand that was originally in a stalemate with Katakuri suddenly burst out with a tyrannical force. Then, Katakuri's arm was directly hit by Orgrim's attack. The hammer smashed it to pieces, and countless glutinous rice cake balls shot out in all directions. Katakuri's figure also followed this force and was blown away. Only then did Orgrim land on the ground with his feet and the sledgehammer in his hand. He pulled out a flower shadow in the air, and said with a very unruly laugh, "Gee ha 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 ha, you lost, Katakuri." If it weren't for Katakuri's special devil fruit ability, he would have become a big man with a broken arm at this time. Standing up from the ruins, Katakuri only felt a little weak, but he was not without a trace. "I have the strength to fight." But, looking at the Sphinx holding the reheat fruit in the distance, Katakuri also knew that the meaning of this battle had been lost. Orgrim didn't pursue anything, because his target was the hot fruit, and now the hot fruit was in the hands of the Sphinx. There is no need to have a hard time with Katakuri. If Katakuri is killed here, it will be equivalent to starting a war with the Big Mom pirates on behalf of Shiki. The impact is too great, and it may disrupt Orgrim's future plans. Besides, he didn't suffer at the hands of Katakuri, and he had no grievances against him, so there was no need to come up and meet him to the death. This time, both of them just wanted to grab the hot fruit, and Orgrim was the winner. Katakuri was silent for a while, and finally gave up on the hot fruit. He looked at Orgrim with a gloomy look and said, "The lion disciple is well deserved. I hope to see you again next time." "Gee ha 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 ha, I am looking forward to." Orgrim smiled evilly. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 182. New World, Melview. The deep-sea overlord, the Black Narwhal, has just docked at this port. Orgrim's figure rushed down impatiently. "Hey hey, won't you wait for me?" cried the Sphinx in dissatisfaction. "I'm in a hurry," Orgrim said without looking back. Beckman happened to be at the port at this time, and he should have come to pick up Orgrim. As soon as he saw Orgrim, Beckman laughed and said, "It's amazing, Orgrim, you snatched the devil fruit from CP-0. He also destroyed a third of Avalon and defeated Charlotte Katakuri, the leader of the Big Mom pirates. These things have already been published in the newspapers. Of course Morgans, the Birdman, has an eye on a chaotic and dark island like Avalon. He is also a little overlord in the dark world. So the news of Rem's Wrathhammer CP-0, killing 2 and seriously injuring 1, has already spread throughout the world. Also, his battle with Katakuri destroyed a large area of Avalon, but that's not the case. There is no third. In fact, the battle between the two of them was not particularly fierce, and it did not last long. But in order to attract attention, Morgans, the Birdman, of course boasted. He forced Orgrim to the battle with Katakuri was said to be the peak battle. Finally, he commented that Orgrim was so powerful that he had become the leader of the new generation of pirates. And he also asserted that it wouldn't be too long before, in 3 to 5 years, Orgrim will be able to become a great pirate on par with the Golden Lion Shiski, Whitebeard Newgate, and Golden Roger. Of course Orgrim also saw the news in these newspapers. For an unscrupulous guy like Morgans, as long as he has traffic, can drive newspaper sales, and has enough breaking news, he can flatter everyone. In the future, he even boasted that Luffy became the 5th emperor. Wasn't he taught by Kaido? So Orgrim didn't really expand, but he still confidently accepted him as the leader of the new generation of pirates. Now under Shiji's banner, among the younger generation, he is the best, there is no doubt about it. In the past 2 months, Orgrim has defeated Marco and Jose. Now he has defeated Big Mom's Katakuri. Among the new generation pirates among them, there is indeed no rival for the time being. Maybe after Roger takes over Douglas Barrett, he may be able to compare with him. The others are not qualified. Gee ha 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 ha, isn't this natural? Who do you think I am? I am Husgarot Orgrim. Orgrim laughed and said. As soon as he finished speaking, Orgrim asked before Beckman could speak, Dr. Indigo, where are Nightingale? I have something urgent to do with them. For your hot fruit, Are you really going to attach it to your warhammer? Beckman asked, raising his eyebrows. This is the first choice for the time being. It is estimated that Dr. Indigo will have to study this technology for a while. During this period, if there are any better options, I don't mind. Orgrim nodded and said. Beckman took Orgrim back together, and the two soon arrived at Shiji's research base. It is heavily guarded here. It can be said that except for Orgrim, waiting for these people with special status, most of Shiji's cotters didn't know what Shiji had done here. Shiji's artificial ancient weapons plan that shocked the world was kept strictly confidential. It didn't take long. Orgrim saw Nightingale and Dr. Indigo in white coats. The two men were holding a tube of potion in their hands and seemed to be discussing something. Before he walked over, he saw the two men again. They started to argue, but after a few words, they calmly discussed some things with each other. Are all scientific researchers so irritable? Orgrim raised his eyebrows and asked. Ha 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 ha, who knows, I am not. Beckman waved his hand and said. You are not a researcher, Orgrim taunted. As soon as the two people walked over, they heard Nightingale say the purity is not enough at all. If it continues like this, it is too slow. It should be purified and injected. Purification and injection can easily cause them to evolve some strange abilities that are not controlled and become more irritable and irritable. Have you forgotten that rhinoceros? Just trying to control the rhinoceros that breathed cold air, more than a dozen of us died. Indigo shook his head and said. I have to say that the evolution potion made by Shiji is indeed very weird, and it has evolved some animals to a very powerful level. For example, the mantis that can use sword skills, and the fighting bear. But these are still within the normal range. Some animals can even awaken superpowers, such as the duck that can discharge electricity. There is also the rhinoceros that Orgrim heard now that can use the power of cold air. These are difficulties that must be overcome. Scientific research and medicine must be boldly practiced. Nightingale argued again. But if we purify it, the production capacity cannot keep up. Do you know how many Baileys we have to smash in it every year? Indigo hesitated and said. Didn't Boss Shiji come back with a fortune? Still short of money? Nightingale asked with an incredulous expression. Realization also takes time. A large amount of gold pouring into the market at once will directly smash the price of gold. Moreover, there are many antiques in it. If you want to maximize the benefits, it is a very long task. Indigo looked at Nightingale with an expression that said, do you know anything about business? Should I say that he, a great scientist, is quite good? Then can't my human experiment plan be implemented as soon as possible? Nightingale was stunned for a moment and asked. At least until our plan is completed, your plan will take a back seat and everything will be given priority to the Admiral's will. Indigo nodded and said. Well, wouldn't it be conservatively estimated that it would take 15 years, Nightingale asked. Roughly the same. Indigo nodded and said. After a slight pause, before Nightingale could complain, Indigo continued. Of course, you can do research with monkeys, orangutans, and other animals first. It's also reasonable, right? It doesn't conflict with our plans either. Nightingale thought the same thing. If human experiments were started from the beginning, the investment would be too high and the risks would be high. It would be more appropriate to start with primate mammals. I have to say that the time he was a pirate had a great influence on Nightingale. At least he no longer regards people as human beings. Just as the two of them were talking about this, Orgrim and Beckman also walked up to them. Lord Orgrim, Indigo said hello to Orgrim very friendly. Captain, why are you here? Nightingale asked curiously. There are two things I need your help with. Orgrim said with a smile. Then he handed the information on the devil fruit's materialization transmission technology to Indigo and said, see if you can learn this if you take the time. I want to give it to you, strengthen the Warhammer and add some abilities or something. Brother. Indigo opened it and looked at it, then nodded and said, "It's very mature. If you don't study the theory and just practice it, you can learn it in a short time." "That'll do." Orgrim smacked his lips in satisfaction. Then he looked at the two of them again, and asked with an evil smile on his lips, "It seems that you are in some trouble." Nightingale said helplessly, "It's not a problem, it's mainly a matter of funding. Many ideas can't be developed. Yes, if the funds are in place, we can do a lot of work at the same time and explore more development directions for IQ," Brother Indigo also said helplessly. As the person who discovered the role of IQ, he certainly wants to apply this discovery in more directions, but the current funds are not enough to support their ideas. Moreover, Shiji is not that interested in other things, so the funds are well controlled, which is enough to study animal evolution, and the rest is postponed for now. Orgrim nodded, and then said, "There is no way. Who told you that this research can only get in but not get out? It swallows a huge amount of funds every year, but it cannot bring enough benefits back in a short time. Boss Shiji being able to make the effort to invest every year is all because of the big plan." "Yes, Brother Indigo has been researching for many years so far, but he is still a gold-swallowing beast that can only get in but not get out. In this case, it would be good for Shiji to grit his teeth and insist on paying. Also expand research directions. Isn't this nonsense? No matter how much money they have, it's not enough for them to be pretentious. What's more, Shiji is really not very good at making money, it's just a pirate's method. Before he obtained Sandora, the land of gold, although he could not be called destitute, he was certainly not rich either." Listening to Orgrim's words, Indigo nodded awkwardly. Nightingale was also a little helpless, but she really had nothing to say. "But when it comes to scientific research, isn't that the case? It's no wonder that only a wealthy entity like the world government can continue to research many powerful things. In the pirate camp, no one has come up with any war weapons PX pacifist stuff." At this moment, Orgrim grinned and said, "I have a formula now. If you can use IQ potion to make this formula work and produce results, from now on, we will have a steady stream of funds to invest." As soon as Orgrim finished speaking, a light flashed in the eyes of Nightingale and Indigo. There was no doubt that they were very interested. Orgrim smiled and put the value in his arms. He took out the piece of paper worth 5.5 billion bellies and handed it to the two of them. "I have invested 5.5 billion in it. Whether I can make a fortune depends on you two," Orgrim said with a smile. "You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 183. Nightingale and Dr. Indigo took the drawing from Orgrim, and they quickly looked at it together. Not long after, Brother Indigo's eyes flashed with excitement, and he looked very excited. As a doctor, Nightingale had some integrity. There was a complicated look in her eyes. Then she looked up at Orgrim, looking like he was hesitant to speak. "If you have anything to say, say it," Orgrim said helplessly. "Captain, I'm afraid you don't want to come up with some kind of psychoactive potion?" Nightingale asked. "Psychotropic potions, even if they are reproduced, can be considered a good product. They can even be used as medical supplies or stimulants to equip the army. The prospects seem to be good. But the demand is definitely not very high. High, because many forces have such things. Even if they develop it, they will only launch a new product to compete with those guys." With Nightingale's understanding and familiarity with Orgrim, his captain's appetite shouldn't be so small. Orgrim grinned evilly and said, "Of course, you should understand this kind of thing." Nightingale nodded. As a doctor, of course he understood. In the history of medicine, there are many things that were supposed to be good for saving diseases and treating people, but in the end, due to dosage and abuse, they turned into harmful things. If you really come up with something like this, your ass will be ruined. Nightingale hesitated for a moment and then said. Whether it sucks or not depends on your skills. Orgrim said with a smile. But as soon as he finished speaking, Beckman looked at him with a strange look, and Indigo also looked like he was hesitant to speak. Orgrim was stunned for a moment. Then he quickly said, "Don't get me wrong, I didn't mean that." Ha 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 ha, everyone started laughing. Then Orgrim ignored these bastards who had filthy minds. He spoke very quickly. If your technology is not up to standard and the workmanship is shoddy, you will naturally only be able to create some things that harm people. But if your methods are more sophisticated, it will be different. We can create high-end products. Come. What do you mean? Indigo frowned slightly and said. Don't make it so addictive, and don't have any particularly serious harm. Try to reduce these two factors, and then focus on happiness. I'm going to name it Rich Woman's Happy Pill, Orgrim said with a smile. If something particularly harmful is created, the world government will definitely ban it as soon as possible. At that time, good-looking products will suddenly become contraband. If it becomes contraband, it will become smuggled goods. For those dealers, they must be very happy. Although the risk is high, there is a lot of profit in it. But for producers like Orgrim, of course, they appear in the market openly. The higher the demand, the more money they make. What's the point of turning a good product into a contraband? Isn't that a disease? Moreover, if it is too harmful, it will also make people dislike it. When the time comes, everyone will shout for beatings, which will also affect Orgrim's rate of making money. Instead of doing this, it is better to take a normal route, focus on the matter of happiness, and reduce the harm as much as possible. Finally, if it can become something widely accepted by the public, like cigars and cigarettes, that would be the best, and it would be much more profitable than just contraband. Nightingale finally breathed a sigh of relief and came up with something like this, which was nothing. Even if IQ is used as a synthetic factor, not only may it be harmless, but taking it for a long time can promote brain development and so on. If a really good product emerges, it might benefit the world. When the time comes to start the evolution of human IQ, it will be wonderful. Nightingale, maybe she left her name in the history of human medical treatment. When he thought of this, he became even more excited. He must do this well. Nightingale still has some moral integrity, but Indigo is a completely evil scientist. He smacked his lips and said, Lord Orgrim, if we follow your idea, the difficulty will increase by leaps and bounds. After all, it's very easy to fall for this thing. If you're a little rough, as long as your IQ is adapted, the results will come out quickly. But if you want to sublimate it, you need to keep researching, refine it to the greatest extent. If you want to produce results, you don't know how difficult it is. Orgrim felt that if he relaxed his standards, he might get 404, and this matter was really bad, even though he was carrying the title of enemy of humanity. But I don't want to really become this kind of demon that harms intelligent creatures all over the world, and I don't want to be hung on a pillar of shame in the future. So in the end, although he hesitated, Orgrim still said, just follow what I said and do the best result. After a pause, Orgrim added, we can also have cruder products. We won't circulate them. We can use them as a means of interrogation in the future. Indigo, the evil scientist, looked at him with a look. Liang said, what a good idea. But soon, he hesitated again and said, will Boss Shiji agree? Just tell him that if the results come out, he won't have to spend money in the future, and he will even get a lot of profits. He will definitely agree. After all, he has plenty of money now, and it should be no problem to invest in venture capital. Orgrim thought for a while and said. Indigo thought the same thing. This thing can see the future after all. It is very possible, and he is also very confident about IQ. He has not done this in the past. Thinking about it, now that they have an idea, they even feel that even if the formula is really inappropriate, they can create a brand new happy medicine for rich women. Then it shouldn't be a big problem to convince boss Shiji to invest. Ogre Mu's idea is also very simple. If nothing happens, Shiji will go to Imperial for further studies in less than 2 years. By then, he can directly take over these things. As for Shiji, after he breaks his leg, Orgrim feels that he should have the capital and strength to challenge him. If the two sides get along well, they will cooperate further. Don't you, Shiji, want to stay in Melview and be a homebody? That's absolutely fine. You do your thing. I'll do mine. You're in the sky, I'm on the sea. Let's help each other and get rich together. As for when Shiji's plan is fully mature and he starts to make trouble, that will be 20 years later. By then, Ogrim can look at the situation and respond. What's more, at that time, Shiji's strength will inevitably drop a lot, and it is not certain whether he can carry the flag, just in case he meets the Straw Hat Pirates again. Orgrim would probably laugh out loud. Of course, if the relationship between the two parties was still very close at that time, Orgrim would also be willing to rescue Shiji. Take care of him, a lonely old man with a broken dream, and even inherit his inheritance. It's wonderful to think about it. Okay, then I will conduct research in this area. After obtaining the Admiral's consent, Indigo nodded and said. Okay, I'll leave it to you then, Ogrim said with a smile. At this point, scientists and scholars and other classes who need high IQs later began to research and produce the rich woman's happy medicine that is used to cultivate future generations. Ogrim in the future, Orgrim relied on this product to make a fortune in one fell swoop. If it weren't for their pirate status, he almost didn't win an international award. After arranging the things here, Orgrim left quickly. Is my cat fruit still there? Orgrim asked Beckman beside him. Well, it's in your collection room. Beckman nodded in response. After a slight pause, Beckman asked, have you found the right person? Of course, his talent is enough to shock everyone, Orgrim said with a smile. On Avalon Island, after fighting Katakuri, due to the conflict between the two overlords, the entire island was affected. Therefore, after seizing the heat fruit, after that, without saying a word, Orgrim gave up his original plan and took the Sphinx directly to the church to rob people. Those guys all passed out. Orgrim searched for a long time among many orphans and found they picked up the little guy Rob Lucci. He was also in a coma at the time, so he took the kid away directly without asking for permission. Afterwards, the group of them quickly took the kid away without any delay on Avalon Island. And left there. And Orgrim also verified one thing. His power of night indeed lasted for a long time and did not fade away. Until they left the eternal night sea of Avalon and saw the sun again, the night the power quickly faded away. This also made Orgrim feel very happy. After Shiji went to Impelton for further training, he decided to position his base in the Sea of Eternal Night and put Avalon grab it. When his strength increases and he truly reaches the stage of a top master, in the Eternal Night Sea and in Avalon, I am afraid that no one in the world can be his opponent. Not even Whitebeard. More powerful than your talent? Beckman asked in surprise. Orgrim was stunned for a moment. What talent did he have? Is he cheating? But he still smiled and said that is definitely incomparable with me. But placed on the sea, it is enough to crush most so-called geniuses. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 184. Early in the morning, the alarm clock rang, and the sleeping figure suddenly sat up from the soft velvet bed. The young figure looked very inconsistent with the big bed, and also seemed out of place with this luxurious house. This little guy is none other than Rob Lucci. More than half a year has passed since he was picked up by Orgrim. Lucci finally got used to this dreamlike life. Reaching out and pressing off the blaring alarm clock, Lucci quickly climbed out of bed, put on his clothes, and went to wash up. As soon as he opened the door, he could see the beautiful maid pushing a cart of breakfast to the restaurant and saying hello to him cordially. "Good morning, Lucci," the maid greeted with a smile. A slight blush appeared on Lucci's face, as if she was a little embarrassed, but she still nodded to her politely and said, "Good morning, Miss Brittany. In half an hour, it's time to have breakfast, so don't be late." Britannia smiled and said to the cute little lady Lucci. Although it has been half a year since she came to this fantasy island, Lucci still occasionally thinks of the darkness he has experienced. Sometimes, he feels how dreamy it all is, and is afraid that when he wakes up, he will be back on the dark slave ship or the dirty church basement. But fortunately, this kind of thing did not happen. Every time he got up, he was in that comfortable room. Saying goodbye to Brittany, Lucci soon came to the courtyard. He lived in Ogre in Mew's courtyard, so as soon as he came here, he saw Enelu, who was 7 or 8 years older than him and was working hard to exercise. At this time, Enelu's feet were hanging upside down on the trunk of a tree, and his hands were holding his head. He kept stretching upwards to exercise his strength. The early morning sunshine just fell on Enelu's figure. The fine beads of sweat and strong muscle seemed to be illuminated by the sun, making him look healthy and strong. Although there is a 7 or 8 year age difference between the two, Lucci looks like a little kid under 10 years old, while Enelu is already a grown man. But in this place, the two of them are already close friends and partners. After all, both of them are orphans, and both were brought back by Lord Orgrim. In the past 6 months, they have practiced together in the courtyard, eaten, drank, and played together. Of course, they have accumulated a deep relationship. Before that, Ai Nero is almost begging for food on an empty island. Lucci is almost a slave. Therefore, they both have no friends, and now, the two are best friends. "Lucci, are you up?" Enelu asked with a smile while exercising. Lucci looked at Enelu, smiled a little, and said, "Are you still here so early?" Although he is also working hard to practice, Lord Orgrim seems to attach great importance to him and asks him not to go too far. He is still a child now. Children have to do children's things, mainly to grow in body. Therefore, his schedule was clearly arranged by Dr. Nightingale. What time should he get up every day, what is appropriate to eat, how much exercise should be done, etc. According to Lord Orgrim's request, when he really passed after the age of 10, the Hell-style training will begin. At that time, you can't complain about hardship and tiredness. Everything depends on your strength. He originally thought that this kind of thing needs to be spurred. After all, when you don't have to worry about eating and drinking, under such circumstances, who would be willing to work hard on his own practice? Aren't you happy being a salty fish? But he found that Enelu was different. This guy was simply a cultivator. It seemed like something was constantly pushing him. The same as moving forward. 24 hours a day, Enelu's sleep time is always within 8 hours. Then, except for eating, drinking, and relaxing for himself for an hour in the afternoon, he spends almost all of his time above the level of cultivation. It is simply outrageous. Even Lucci felt that Lord Orgrim, who saved them from the sea of suffering, was not so crazy. And because of this, Lucci can be considered here within half a year. I saw Enel's progress. Now, he can pierce a 3 cm thick iron plate with just one finger. It seems very easy. That kind of skill is called finger gun. Lucci was envious of this and a little puzzled. Until later, Enelu told him that if he didn't train hard, sooner or later, he would be forced by Lord Orgrim to eat the thunder fruit. He didn't want to eat, so he had to work even more crazily to make himself stronger to avoid being seized by Lord Orgrim. Of course, Lucci also knows what the thunder fruit is. It is the legendary and extremely powerful devil fruit ability. As for devil fruit users, they all seem to be very powerful. The slave trader who captured him was a devil fruit user. But he also knew that there were indeed some people who didn't like the power of devil fruits and didn't want to become landlubbers. He thought Enel was like this. After asking around, I found out that Enel was not against becoming a devil fruit user, but simply didn't want to eat the thunder fruit, that's all. This made Lucci completely unable to understand, why? Is the thunder fruit so powerful? If it were him to choose, he would definitely eat it without hesitation. However, whenever Enilu mentioned this matter, he would always have a very disgusted expression on his face, and he was unwilling to say anything more. He only told Lucci that if one day someone tricks you into eating thunder fruit, you must refuse, otherwise I will 100% regret it in the future. Lucci didn't know the reason for this, but he also knew very well that Enilu would definitely not harm him because the two of them were good friends. So he nodded very obediently and agreed. Although the two were chatting, Enilu did not stop his training. Lucci was also very accustomed to running circles around the perimeter of the courtyard. Before having breakfast, he needed to run 30 laps in the courtyard. At this time, Lord Orgrim gave him the task. It's been like this every day for nearly half a year. In the past 6 months, Lucci has also felt changes in himself. Before coming here, he barely had enough to eat, couldn't wear warm clothes, and was as thin as a stick. But after coming here, he had a scientific diet, a good routine, and appropriate training programs. This made his originally thin body quickly become stronger. At this time, Lucci touched his abdomen a little, and he could even feel that his abdominal muscles were getting stronger. He has been here for more than half a year, and of course he knows where this place is, although everything looks beautiful. But this place is truly an evil place, a den of pirates, and the den of the top pirate, Golden Lion Shiji, in the world today. Lord Orgrim, who brought him here, was also a powerful figure on the sea. Lucci had heard of his name a long time ago. Evil Skull Crusher, enemy of mankind, disciple of the lion. Before coming into contact with Lord Orgrim, Lucci's impression was that such a person must be an extremely cruel person who would kill 10 people every day and might even eat children alive, right? During the time when he first came here, Lucci occasionally wondered whether Lord Orgrim wanted to make him fatter and then eat him or something. But now, he doesn't think about it at all. Lord Orgrim has never denied his identity as a pirate, nor has he denied that he is an evil person who has killed countless lives and caused many tragedies. But in Lucci's view, Lord Orgrim was not as evil as he said. Every time he saw him, he would laugh and care about him. And everyone in the courtyard liked him very much. Occasionally, Lucci would hear Brittany and the other beautiful maid sisters discussing the gossip of Lord Orgrim, as if they wanted to go and introduce themselves at night, but also afraid of being rejected. The days here are undoubtedly very happy, whether it is Mr. Beckman, Sister Neiman, or the Sphinx who always likes to put apples on his head. In short, although they all have some strange feelings, they are all very good to themselves. Here, it seems like I have returned to the time when I was very young and had a home, same. Therefore, Lucci, who was originally captured by slave traders, still longed for a bright world and wanted to become a righteous navy. Now that he has completely changed these thoughts, he wants to become a pirate like Lord Orgrim. Lord Orgrim happily approved his idea after hearing it, and told him that whether he is a navy either way, or become someone else. But in the final analysis, this world is all about strength. Only by being strong can you have everything and protect the people and things you want to protect. Lucci didn't quite understand the meaning of this, but now he seemed to have someone and something he wanted to work hard to protect, and that was Lord Orgrim, and this big family that made him feel warm. Therefore, he must work hard to become stronger. Only strength is the foundation that can protect everyone. He, Rob Lucci, wants to become a great pirate, as powerful, as confident, and as powerful as Lord Orgrim. The courtyard was not particularly big. In no time, Lucci had finished 30 laps. He was sweating hotly. As soon as he stopped, Anilu covered his head with a brand new white towel. "Come on, we should go eat," Anilu said with a smile. Lucci nodded, quickly wiped off his sweat, and then followed Anilu and walked towards the restaurant. Before he entered the restaurant, he heard his last voice. The adoring Lord Orgrim burst into laughter. "Gee ha 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 ha, Sphinx, don't get your hands burned, I won't be responsible. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates." Author, Zippo. Chapter 185. After following Enel into the restaurant, Lucci saw Lord Orgrim. There are also people like Lord Beckman, Sister Neiman, Sphinx, Katerina Dupont, and others. But they were not sitting at the dining table, eating those sumptuous breakfasts. Instead, they all gathered in the middle of the restaurant, as if they were discussing something, and everyone was laughing happily. "Gee ha 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 ha, give up, you will not be recognized by my hammer," Sphinx Orgrim said with a laugh. The rest of the people around him also laughed. Lucci took a closer look and found that they were gathered around a war hammer. Of course Lucci recognized that war hammer, it was Orgrim's. Lord Grim's weapon seems to be called the Doom Hammer, which is very powerful. It is said that Lord Orgrim can smash an island with a full blow of this warhammer. I don't know if it is true or not. Lucci he has never seen it, but he is willing to believe it is true, because Lord Orgrim is so powerful that it is impossible to guess. Impossible, there is no weapon in this world that I, the Sphinx, cannot conquer. The Sphinx shook her twin ponytails and said very confidently. As soon as he finished speaking, Lucci saw that the Sphinx held his hands on the handle of the huge warhammer, and then seemed to want to use it. It's like picking up the warhammer from the ground. Lucci also tried this before, but with his strength, he couldn't pick up the heavy warhammer at all. But Uncle Hank was able to pick it up, and he looked very skillful. Lord Reem and others called him the hammer bearer. It is said that Uncle Hank was specially responsible for carrying weapons for Lord Orgrim, and he was also one of the most loyal subordinates around Lord Orgrim. A long time ago, he followed Lord Orgrim's footsteps and walked together from the North Sea to the New World. He was highly valued by Lord Orgrim. It must be because of this that Lord Orgrim put the weapon was handed over to Uncle Hank to carry. Because Lord Orgrim often said that the Doom Hammer was his romance. If he didn't trust and value him very much, how could he give his beloved weapon to others? Where is the burden? I really envy Uncle Hank. It would be great if one day in the future, I can also carry that heavy warhammer for Lord Orgrim. Although I was thinking about this, Lucci soon came to him. Orgrim's side began to watch the fun. "Oh. Looky, Anilu, are you finished too? Come on, let's see the Sphinx, a guy who doesn't overestimate his abilities, challenge my warhammer." Orgrim reached out and rubbed Lucci's head, and said hello to Anilu. Before Lucci could speak to Anilu, Sphinx let go of his hands again, then he rubbed his white and tender hands, and said in an arrogant voice, "Stand far away. Don't hurt you when I lift up the warhammer." Orgrim and others all smiled, and then took 2 steps back. Then, the Sphinx grabbed the handle of the warhammer again, and then her face turned red instantly, and the cute muscles on her white arms began to beat. "Drink," the Sphinx shouted. With one exertion of force in his hand, it seemed as if he was about to pull up the heavy warhammer. Although this warhammer is heavy, it is not something that no one can lift. Although the Sphinx is not strong in strength, it was human, but with her strength, it was no problem to swing a sledgehammer. But just when she was about to pull the warhammer up, something suddenly changed. The warhammer instantly turned into a red color, and there was a wave of heat. It jumped in everyone's faces, and the temperature in the restaurant began to rise rapidly. Lucci was a little surprised and puzzled. He had grabbed Lord Orgrim's warhammer before, but this had never happened before. "Don't try to break away from me," the Sphinx shouted again. The originally slender and white palm was instantly covered with a layer of dark and powerful domineering energy. Then, the Sphinx suppressed the burning breath coming from his hand and breathed. He looked like he was about to lift the warhammer. But the warhammer seemed to feel the Sphinx's stubbornness, and it also looked very unconvinced. The red color gradually turned into crimson. The explosion of high temperature caused the air around the warhammer to melt. It became twisted, and Lucci seemed to feel that the ends of his hair were a little curled. At this moment, the Sphinx screamed because she found that the revolver hanging on her waist was beginning to melt. Got it? No, I spent a lot of money to buy this. The Sphinx threw away the warhammer, grabbed the red revolver at his waist distressedly, and shouted. The moment the warhammer landed, a dark mark was burned on the ground by the high temperature, as if some red slurry was melted out of the floor tiles. Then, the suffocating heat wave quickly dissipated, and the warhammer returned to its normal appearance. Ha 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 ha, how about? I just said that my warhammer cannot be conquered by you, right? Orgrim laughed and said. Sphinx looked at the revolver in his hand with the barrel softened and drooped, and said very angrily, Orgrim, you pay me, this one I bought the gun for 2 million Baileys. Orgrim said with a confused look on his face, it's not me who broke it. It was your damn warhammer that broke it, so you're responsible, the Sphinx said very unconvinced. Is there any truth to this? Orgrim said helplessly. I do not care, Sphinx said as if I was relying on you. At the same time, Beckman also reached out and grabbed the handle of the warhammer, then raised his hand and pulled it, and picked it up very easily. But with the Sphinx was different. After Beckman grabbed the warhammer and raised it, the warhammer didn't change at all. It looked very well behaved. It was completely different from the bad-tempered feeling just now. The Sphinx was also shocked and asked unconvinced why. Why is it okay for him to take it? I've said it before, my warhammer doesn't like you, ha 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 ha, maybe this is the mutual contempt between cold weapons and hot firepower? Orgrim laughed. Beckman also uses a gun, right, Sphinx said with a roar. Ha ha, this warhammer is very familiar to me. I wiped the blood stains on it frequently when it was a child, Beckman said with a smile. You said it as if it would grow. Sphinx complained. Everyone laughed again. Orgrim reached out and patted Lucci on the head, and asked with a smile, how is it, is my warhammer stronger again? Lucci was also a little confused at this time. He nodded first, and then asked, what's going on, Lord Orgrim? Gee ha 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 ha, my warhammer ate the hot fruit, it has been strengthened. It can be said that it is now the real Doom Hammer, Orgrim laughed. Orgrim is now grabbing this warhammer, and with one hammer blow, he can completely match the high temperature and shock wave, and release a heat breath that is not inferior to Kaido. Even powerful impact and high temperature erupting at the same time, it is not impossible to destroy the soldiers resisting his warhammer in an instant. In short, he is very satisfied with his warhammer now. Moreover, Orgrim seems to feel that the originally lifeless warhammer is now that I have some spirituality, I seem to be able to understand what he means. For example, Orgrim raised his hand and gently grabbed the warhammer that Beckman had placed on the ground. The warhammer turned red instantly, and the scorching high temperature caused an explosion of airflow. It exploded from the ground with a bang, and landed firmly in Orgrim's hand. It was as if there was some connection between them. And even though Orgrim didn't have the armament-colored domineering energy in his hand, he didn't feel anything unusual when he grabbed the red hammer handle. It won't be burned by the high temperature, and there is no stinging sensation. Instead, it is very gentle. Gee ha 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 ha, not bad. Orgrim laughed. After more than half a year, yesterday, Dr. Indigo officially attached the hot fruit to this warhammer. Orgrim is very satisfied now. Today I will show it to everyone. Basically, it can be said that Doom Hammer has been given its own label by Orgrim. Except for those people recognized by Warhammer, such as Hank, Neiman, and Beckman, the rest of them, if not Orgrim's permission. If you pick up the Warhammer, you will be fiercely resisted by the Warhammer just like the Sphinx just now. Maybe you can hold it for a while, but how long you hold it, you will be subject to the high temperature backlash. Until it's too hot to hold. Therefore, even if Orgrim fights furiously on the battlefield and doesn't need the Warhammer, there's no need to worry about some despicable guy stealing the Warhammer while he's not paying attention. Gee ha 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 ha, okay, if you are curious, I will take the time to demonstrate it to you later. Let's eat first, Orgrim greeted with a smile. Soon, a group of them sat at the dining table, chatting while eating. Lucci couldn't quite understand what they were talking about the situation on the sea, but he's still listening with gusto. Did you hear that? What about Douglas Barrett, who left the Roger Pirates? Beckman bit into a piece of beef and seemed to remember something, and said. Of course I've heard about it, it was in the newspapers yesterday. Orgrim nodded and said. Katerina de Pen picked up the red wine glass and took a sip, then smacked her lips and said, I only joined for half a year and then left. What is that guy doing? Yes, about half a year ago, not long after Orgrim and others returned from Avalon Island. The Roger Pirates absorbed Douglas Barrett, who was running rampant on the sea, and made him theirs crew member. That guy was also very powerful, and he was soon called the descendant of the devil by the people on the sea. But for some reason, he broke away from the Roger Pirates not long ago and caused quite a wave on the sea. After all, this can be regarded as the first time the Roger Pirates have split. By the way, Brother Sama, there are rumors saying that Kaido secretly controls the country of Wano. Is it true or not? Neiman suddenly spoke again. A flash of light flashed in Orgrim's eyes, and then he grinned. If nothing else happens, it should be true, because Kaido seemed to be very interested in Wano a long time ago. Appearance. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 186. As for Lucci's devil fruit, after reading everyone's comments, well, how should I put it, I've written that Lucci ate the ancient one, and I've also written that Lucci ate the natural one in the end. I still think the leopard is more handsome. I also want to write about a little leopard, and I hope the big guys will bear with me. This year is the year 1499 in the Haiwan calendar. This year, Orgrim has been looking forward to a big event, that is, Roger will dominate the Grand Line and find the final island of Loftruag, recognized as the Pirate King by the world government. It's just that it's been a few months since 1499, and Roger hasn't caused any big events yet, and Orgrim also has some doubts in his heart. Could it be that because he showed up, the Roger Pirates couldn't become the Pirate King? Although he had some doubts in his heart, Orgrim had no idea. After all, he had no way of doing this. When Orgrim got up early in the morning, he ran to his collection room and took out the animal-type cat fruit that had been treasured for many years. Through recent inspection and thinking, Orgrim decided to strengthen Lucci's training. This kid couldn't be measured by ordinary people at all. He really has extraordinary talent. The current amount of training is already heavy enough for ordinary people, but for Lucci, it seems that it is still not enough. And Orgrim also decided to officially hand over the cat fruit to Lucci. When I came to the courtyard, I saw Lucci doing push-ups, while Enilu was sitting cross-legged under the shade of the tree, practicing the way he looked before, practicing his knowledge, sex, and dominance. As soon as Orgrim stepped into the courtyard, Enel opened his eyes and said with a smile, Lord Orgrim, you are here. Oh, it seems that your knowledge is pretty good, Orgrim responded with a smile. Eniru also said happily, I feel that I am very talented in the haki of seeing and hearing, but I am very unskilled in the haki of armed color. Yeah? In other words, Your attack power is not very strong, so in my opinion, you should eat the thunder fruit. The thunder fruit can greatly enhance your attack power, and it can also increase your domineering power. It is simply killing two birds with one stone. Ah, how is it? Do you want to eat? Orgrim seized the opportunity and wanted to deceive Enel. After hearing Orgrim's words, Enel's expression suddenly changed and he quickly said ahem, no, please allow me to refuse. I think I can save it a little more without wasting such a powerful ability as the thunder fruit. Oh, don't be so polite, Enel, I have great expectations for you. How can I say it's a waste to give you the thunder fruit? What a perfect match, Orgrim deceived again. Definitely next time, Enel shook his head while fooling Orgrim. You've said it several times, next time, Orgrim said with some dissatisfaction. But he didn't really force Enelu to do anything. He believed that time would make him change his mind. Turning to look at the kid Lucci, Orgrim waved to him and said, come here. Lucci ran to Orgrim's side and asked curiously, what's the matter? Something. Lord Orgrim. Gee ha 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 ha, I'll give you a gift. Orgrim smiled, and then handed the cat fruit to Lucci. This is, devil fruit. Lucci looked at the devil fruit in his hand in surprise. Yes, this is the ability of the animal type, cat fruit and leopard form. Although it does not sound very strong, I think it is very suitable for you. If you think it is suitable, Orgrim said with a smile. Before he finished speaking, Lucci said excitedly, I'll eat it. As soon as he finished speaking, Lucci bit the mau fruit without hesitation and squirted out a stream of juice. Then, his surprised expression turned bitter. It tasted so bad. Is this a devil fruit? But this is the first gift that Lord Orgrim has given me. No matter what, I will eat it and cannot live up to Lord Orgrim's wishes. While thinking this, Lucci worked hard and took 4 or 5 mouthfuls to eat all the devil fruit. Orgrim was shocked at this time. He hasn't finished speaking yet, okay. Didn't you expect Lucci to trust you so much? He didn't even have time to tell Lucci that the taste of this devil fruit was very bad, and there was no need to eat it all, just one bite. Before Orgrim could come back to his senses, Lucci reached out and wiped the juice from the corner of his mouth. Although his expression was sad, he still said with a smile, thank you, Lord Orgrim. It's delicious. You, Orgrim hesitated for a moment, then finally shook his head with a wry smile, patted Lucci on the head and said, as long as you are happy. As soon as he said these words, Lucci felt that something was wrong with him. Before he could speak, his young body instantly expanded several times, and leopard's markings and fur grew on his body. In the blink of an eye, he transformed into a leopard man. Lucci was a little surprised. But before he could react, with a snap, he changed again, shrinking rapidly, and then turned into a little leopard on all fours, completely transformed into a beast. As if he couldn't control this power, Lucci struggled a few times, vaguely trying to turn into a human, but failed and maintained the form of a leopard. Enel was also shocked at this time. Damn it, in the blink of an eye, Lucci became a devil fruit user? Don't you even think about it? Comparing it with Lucci, Enelu felt that he was too sorry for Lord Orgrim's training. Lucci ate the devil fruit without saying a word, but he refused the thunder fruit again and again. Next time, I will try to overcome my own psychological shadow and respond to Lord Orgrim's expectations, Enelu thought secretly in his heart. Just when Orgrim and Enelu were watching Lucci turn into a little leopard, struggling to change back, the voice of the Sphinx came from outside the courtyard. Orgrim Master Hammer. I brought you a surprise gift. The voice arrived before the Sphinx arrived. When Orgrim heard the words, he turned around and saw the little Lolita Sphinx. She seemed to have grown up over the years. She was holding a thick stick in her hand. The hemp rope, with its back turned to him, seemed to be dragging something into the yard. What the hell are you doing? Orgrim asked in surprise. The Sphinx ignored Orgrim and continued to drag something into the courtyard with gritted teeth. Then she suddenly exerted her strength and shouted, "Here, madam, come in." As she finished speaking, her figure suddenly took a few steps back into the yard, and then, a figure emerged from the other end of the hemp rope. It was a tall and strong beast with a horn like ice crystal. It looked like very strong, with many ice crystals attached to his body. He is mighty and domineering. Rhino, Orgrim was shocked. What is this little lowly doing? Ha ha ha, how about it? This is a gift I specially picked for you. Look at its handsome figure, mighty posture, and domineering eyes. Doesn't it match you well? When I first saw it, I thought it would be a good pet for you. Sphinx laughed and said. But as soon as she finished speaking, she saw the little leopard next to Orgrim. Then she was stunned for a moment and said, "Huh? When did you get a leopard?" After saying that, the Sphinx loosened his grip and the hemp rope fell directly to the ground. He ran to Orgrim's side with both feet and held the little leopard in his arms. "I like this little guy very much. How about we exchange gifts? I give you the rhinoceros, you give me the leopard," Sphinx said enthusiastically. Before Orgrim could speak, the little leopard spoke. "It's me, Sphinx, I'm Lucci," Lucci said while struggling. The Sphinx was stunned and asked in surprise, "Lucci? How did you become a beast?" "I just ate an animal devil fruit and I can't control my power," Lucci said helplessly. "Hey, I thought it was some kind of pet, but it turns out to be you," Sphinx said with a look of disgust. At the same time, the rhinoceros, who was no longer restrained by the hemp rope, seemed to be irritable. He stared at Orgrim's sturdy figure, dug his feet in the courtyard, pointed the rhinoceros horn at Orgrim, and accelerated towards him. "Damn it," Orgrim cursed secretly. Seeing the giant beast charging towards him, he had no intention of avoiding it. Behind him was Lucci, who had transformed into a little leopard. What if he was accidentally trampled to death by this huge rhinoceros? Orgrim shouted low, and when the rhinoceros collided, he suddenly exerted force with his arms and grabbed its rhino horns. Then his muscles surged and he forcibly lifted the rhinoceros from the ground. Without saying a word, he threw it to the ground again, smashing it into pieces. "Where did this guy come from?" Orgrim asked in surprise. As soon as he finished speaking, before the Sphinx could speak, a burst of cold air spit out from the rhino's mouth, directly freezing Orgrim's legs. On the grass in the courtyard. "Yo-ho, that's a bit interesting," Orgrim murmured curiously. He seemed to have reacted. It seemed that Nightingale and the others had created a mutated rhinoceros because of the increased purity. As expected, the Sphinx quickly said, "How about it? Interesting. It's amazing. I snatched it from Indigo." "You're a fucking genius," Orgrim said helplessly. At this moment, Beckman's figure hurriedly ran in. When he saw the zoo-like scene in the courtyard, he was stunned for a moment, and then he didn't ask any more questions. He quickly said, "Orgrim, something big happened. Come on, follow me to see Boss Shiji." "What's the big deal?" Orgrim asked in surprise. He had rarely seen Beckman look so glum, so he was also very curious. "Roger, this is Roger's news. They found the legendary Raf Drew, circled the Grand Line, and conquered the Grand Line," Beckman said loudly. The moment his words fell, Orgrim and others were all stunned. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 187. Orgrim, Sphinx, and others followed Beckman all the way to Shiji's palace. At this time, many people gathered in the palace, including Nightingale, Indigo, Katerina Dupont, Neiman, Rengar, and some other cotters under Shiji. Orgrim was stunned for a moment. How dare I be the last one to know the news? At this time, Shiji was sitting on his throne, holding a newspaper in his hand, staring at the newspaper with a very complicated expression. Orgrim saw the disbelief on his face, and saw that it was so. Orgrim did not disturb Shiki, but walked to Niemann and others and said, "Bring me a newspaper." Soon, Niemann handed the newspaper to Orgrim. As soon as you take a look at Orgrim, the title is very attractive. The Birth of the Pirate King. The man who dominated the Grand Line. One Piece, Orgrim murmured softly, and then raised his eyes to look at Shiji on the throne. I have to say that this title is really too hateful. Especially for a hero like Shiji, it is simply irony. Shiji has been working hard towards the position of pirate overlord, but when he turns around, his old rival is actually recognized as the Pirate King by the world government. What the hell? I don't know what he is thinking now. What do you think? Then Orgrim continued reading. About a week ago, the Roger pirates found the legendary final island of Ravdru. They circled the Grand Line and returned to the original island. At the starting point. Therefore, their Roger pirates also became the first people in history to circumnavigate the Grand Route and completely conquer this route. Whether the island of Ravdru existed before or not, it has always been very interesting. Controversial. But the world government is clear about this. Ravdru is real and is indeed the final island. There are also shocking secrets hidden on it. Roger found Ravdru and boarded it to travel around. After a lap of the Grand Line, the world government panicked. What if these bastards exposed the dirt on me? Therefore, the world government did not hesitate to carry Roger to the throne of the Pirate King and let him become a public enemy of ambitious pirates. And gave Roger an unprecedented bounty. Orgrim was looking at this new bounty order at this time. The Pirate King Gold Roger has a bounty of 5.5648 million Baileys. Seeing this, Orgrim couldn't help but look up at Shiji. If Orgrim remembers correctly, this boss of his own had always been the leader of the bounty. But even so, he only offered a reward of more than 3.47 billion Baileys. As for Newgate and so on, it is currently only around 2.9 billion Bari. And Roger, the man who used to be Golden Roger, has now become Pirate King Roger in one breath, directly ascending to the highest level of pirates. And the bounty has skyrocketed, surpassing Shiji by more than 20 billion. Don't be too exaggerated. Gold, the Sphinx murmured something strange. Then he asked, did Roger's original name be Gold? I thought his name was Gold. Where is Roger? Orgrim smiled. He knew in his heart that this was the world government's cover-up for him. Markov. Just when Orgrim wanted to explain to Sphinx, Shiji raised his head, looked at the Sphinx, and said softly, no, Roger will be called Gol. Roger, it seems that Lord Ravdru must be hiding some secret that makes the world government feel guilty. Whether it is the name One Piece or the forced change of his last name, the world government is at work. The Sphinx was stunned for a moment after listening to Shiji's words, and nodded. Then, she said with dissatisfaction, Boss Shiji, what does this world government mean? Isn't it just that we found an island where birds don't shit? Will Roger become the Pirate King? Will he not let us go, in your eyes? Rengar also said in a deep voice, Admiral, do you want to find Roger and kill them? Just kill them. Wouldn't we also become the Pirate King? Something flashed in Shiji's eyes. Moving spirit. Of course he knew that the world government's decision to give that bastard Roger the title of Pirate King must be unkind, but he had to say that it was indeed very tempting. If Roger were killed now, wouldn't it be Shiki who became the Pirate King? But soon, Shiji shook his head slightly and said, can't find it, Roger pirates, disbanded. Disbanded, the Sphinx was shocked. The pirate group of the King of Pirates was disbanded like this? Shiji did not respond, but focused his attention on Orgrim, who was reading the newspaper. Orgrim Reem seemed to be aware of it, and turned to look at Shiji. Orgrim, what do you think? Shiji asked. Orgrim was stunned for a moment, and then said, read it from the newspaper. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone was stunned. Shiji also looked stunned. Is this what I'm asking you? But soon, Orgrim smiled and said obviously, Lord Rafdru has a shocking secret, and Roger already knows the secret, whether he is the pirate king or this exaggerated regardless of the bounty, they are all used by the world government to get rid of Roger. I believe that the Navy has gone crazy now, right? As soon as he finished speaking, Shiji nodded, and then Indigo said that's right. As you guessed by Lord Orgrim, the Navy has indeed gone crazy. Admiral Cyborg Kong issued a mobilization order for the entire army, requiring all naval members in all sea areas to take action, and must do so in the shortest possible time. Take Roger back to the Navy headquarters. I estimate that Sengoku, Garp, Zifa, and the new generation of Navy guys will all rush into the new world soon, Shiki added softly. The Roger pirates found Ralph Drew and last appeared in the new world, so even if they were disbanded, they would most likely still be in the new world. The casual Navy must be like crazy, and high-level combat forces rush into the new world one after another. It is foreseeable that the new world will become a mess next. After all, the Navy's advanced combat power rushed into the new world, and if they wanted to find Roger, they would inevitably involve many pirate forces' territory. Everyone knows that your banner is to arrest Roger, but who knows if you will suddenly fall out. Therefore, the pirate forces will definitely resist this crazy action of the Navy. There might be a big fight. Do you think we should get involved? Shiki looked at Orgrim and asked. Orgrim thought for a while, then shook his head and said no matter how hard Roger hides, he will not hide in the sky. Although the new world will soon fall into chaos, but it seems, has nothing to do with us. You are right, it has little to do with us, Shiji said with a smile. After a slight pause, Shiji said let the Navy fight those bastards. Their crazy behavior will not last long in the new world. This kind of chaos may bring trouble to others, but for us, it is actually a good thing. That's right, Shiji and the others are hanging high in the air. Except for those fixed territories that may be swept away by the Navy, the rest has basically no impact on him. The Navy's crazy action is obviously without foundation. If they persist for a few months at most, they will still have to withdraw from the New World. By then, the Navy will have destroyed the New World again, and as long as other forces are involved, they will be affected to some extent. Shiji, on the other hand, can retain most of his strength. After the Navy retreats, he may be able to expand. This plan is indeed a good one, but the premise is that after Roger is caught, Shiji will not get too crazy. But no matter what the arrangement is, it will have no impact on Orgrim's interests. But I'm also curious about the secret of existence on Ravdru, and it's very possible that Roger left something there, such as, there is news about ancient weapons and the like, so we also need to find Ravdru. Shiki said in a deep voice. Orgrim nodded, there was nothing wrong with him. From now on, no one who is a pirate would not want to find Ravdru. As for what Roger said when he was executed in the East China Sea, he is just leading a new pirate craze. It has little impact on old pirates like them. If it were not for his words of power, status, fame, and wealth, they would all go to Ralph Drew. I plan to divide it into two ways. The first one is to find the historical text of the road sign. The second one is to find Roger and ask him about Ralph Drew, Shiki said softly. Orgrim still nodded, yes, at this stage, these two options are the most feasible. But before he could speak, Shiji continued, well, let's divide the troops into two groups. Orgrim, take your people and go find Roger. Orgrim nodded habitually. Then looked stunned and asked in surprise, should I go find Roger? Didn't you just say that the Roger Pirates group was disbanded and they couldn't be found? Was it arranged for me this time? Can you have some moral integrity? Well, that guy Roger can't be caught by the stupid Navy, so go find him, Shiji said with great confidence. Roger is a man he recognized. How could he be caught by the stupid Navy? That is simply an insult to him and Roger. Therefore, Shiji wants to find Roger by himself. Come, ask Raf Drew about his secret, and of course, if you have the ability, kill him. If it were an ordinary person, it would be impossible to find the whereabouts of the Roger pirates. But Orgrim, really he knows a little bit. But whether he knows it or not, whether to tell Shiji or not is another matter. At this time, Orgrim also had some thoughts in his mind. Seeing Roger become the king, he will not live long. It's time to surrender. By then, will it be far away before Shiki goes to Impelton for further studies? Orgrim, it's time to arrange some of your own things, get ready, and take over Shiji. Fine. Orgrim nodded and said. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 188. Admiralty Marineford. Garp and others were walking out of the war conference room. Not long ago, Marshal Cyborg announced the Navy's plan to capture Roger. Big guys like Garp and others were all looking for the whereabouts of the Roger pirates. And the place they were going to was pretty much what Shiji and the others had guessed, which was the New World. At this time, Garp was holding a Roger's reward order in his hand. Looking at the name Golden Roger on it, he felt a little strange. However, to hide exists, Garp murmured softly. As Roger's old rival, Garp certainly knew what Roger's real name was. In fact, in the early years, when Roger was not so naughty, the world government did not hide it. Take his name. Just call him Golden Gordy Roger. Later, inexplicably, it became Golden Roger. As the same Garp, who was named after him, seemed to feel something was wrong. They belong to the D family, and Rav Drew, and what is the connection between the world government and the government? Lieutenant General Garp, what's wrong? Jun was walking beside Garp and didn't hear clearly what Garp was mumbling, so he asked curiously. Garp was stunned for a moment, then said with a smile nothing, just a little emotional. Jun also smiled and said, is it emotional that my old rival has become the pirate king in the blink of an eye? Garp he curled his lips non-committally and said nothing. Jun sighed slightly, and then said, sometimes I have to say that Lieutenant General Garp, your stubbornness and persistence are indeed very prophetic. Ha 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 ha, right, Garp said with a big smile. Well, Rox was the same back then, and so is Roger now. The guy you are targeting will always be able to do some unexpected things and achievements in the end. If you had known that Roger would be able to get to where he is today, when he was in Edwall, we should not focus on Shiji, but rather, after Jun said this, he stopped talking. After all, this is all an afterthought, and it's useless to talk about it. Can it still change history? When Garp heard this, he was not happy. Instead, his eyes darkened slightly and he said softly, I'd rather it didn't happen. In the end, it's not like I didn't catch him. It was my fault. Jun was stunned for a moment, and was just about to open his mouth to comfort Garp. Garp laughed again and said, forget it, the matter has come to this, and self-pity are of no use. It's better to do it earlier. Go catch that bastard Roger. Do you think he will be hiding in the New World? Probably so. After all, compared to other sea areas, only the New World is the place where our naval control is weakest and most chaotic. Will it seem safer there? Jun thought for a while and then said. In fact, it was not just Jun who thought this way, but also the top brass of the Navy. Even the pirate bosses thought this way. Shiki felt that Roger should be hiding there. What about the New World? Garp nodded, but didn't say anything. Theoretically, it seems so, but Garp always feels that it's not that simple. If the theory can really guarantee 100%, then Roger should be in jail long ago. However, he didn't have much clue for a while, so of course he searched in the direction of the greatest possibility. Entering the New World, you won't just face that guy Roger, Garp muttered softly. Jun also nodded, and then asked, "Do you think we can catch Roger quickly?" Garp grinned, then shook his head and said, "It's hard to say, just kidding, the Roger pirates used to, even though I was taking risks, I couldn't catch them. Now that the Roger pirates are in pieces, they don't even take risks anymore and focus on playing hide and seek with your navy. It's weird that it's so easy to catch." Whether it's Garp or Warring States, they all know in their hearts that there is a high probability that they won't have a chance to catch Roger when they go to the New World this time. But as a navy, of course you can't do nothing. Even if the chances are slim, you still have to work hard. The biggest worry is that Roger and the others will be caught by the big pirates in the New World, such as Shiji. If this really happens, the navy will be even more passive. So this time we went to the New World. On the one hand, we wanted to capture Roger, and on the other hand, we also put pressure on those bastards and muddied the waters. Time passed, and almost a month later, on the edge of a remote beach in the lawless zone on the Chambord Islands, a figure gradually crawled out of the sea. He was naked to the upper body, carrying a wet shirt in his hand, and walked to the shore on a pair of flip-flops. Then he stretched out his hand to wring out the sea water from his shirt, and put the wet shirt back on. He smoothed back his long golden hair that was stained by the sea water, revealing his handsome face. This man didn't look too young, but he was very handsome. Even though he looked like he had just climbed out of the sea after a shipwreck, he still exuded the charm of a mature man. At first glance, one can tell that this guy is a very handsome man. That's right, this man is none other than Hades Shilbaz Rayleigh. Today, he is known as the Pirate King's right arm. But now that the Roger pirates have been disbanded, and their members have all gone their separate ways, it seems that there is no point in having the right arm but not the right arm. Rayleigh is also a cruel guy. In the New World, after the Roger pirates disbanded, he almost swam all the way to the Red Continent. Then he randomly found a pirate ship, lurked in the cabin, and entered Fishman Island. When the pirates were returning to the first half of the Grand Line from Fishman Island, they were attacked by sea beasts as they approached the sea. The entire army was wiped out, and Rayleigh swam from the sea to the Shampoo Islands in one breath. It has to be said that with the way he acted, it would be a shame if the Navy could catch him. Should we say that he is worthy of being a ruthless person who can still swim across the windless zone at the age of more than 70? At this time, he was in his prime, and his strength seemed to be at its peak, even more exaggerated than it would be in the future. As soon as Rayleigh climbed ashore, the newsbird in the sky seemed to see him and thought that this guy should also be a customer. He flapped his wings and flew down. Rayleigh smiled, took out a few gold belly rice from his pocket, and threw them into the newsbird's bag. The newsbird also gave him a newspaper very wisely. The newspaper got a little wet with his fingers, but Rayleigh didn't care. He just found a rock and sat down. He touched his body to get a cigarette, but soon, he was stunned and swam here by himself from the sea. Where else is there any cigarette? After smiling bitterly, Rayleigh opened the newspaper. Sure enough, the New World was in chaos at this time. The Sengoku admiral of the Navy had a fierce conflict with the Whitebeard pirates. The two sides fought in a certain sea area and destroyed 4 or 5 islands in a row. Garp and Zifa severely damaged Charlotte Lingling in the waters of Totland. If it weren't for the lack of troops, they would probably be able to reach Cake Island. On the contrary, Shiji and Kaido have not shown up yet, and they have not reacted at all to the various actions of the Navy. There are some other less exciting news on it, such as the battle between Crocodile and Kuzan of the Navy in a certain sea area, and the outcome is unknown. After flipping through a few more pages, Rayleigh suddenly noticed a piece of news. In the Gateway area of the New World Sea, 2 weeks ago, Vice Admiral Jun of the Navy headquarters had an encounter with the lion disciple Kazguros Orgrim. The battle between the two sides was very brief. Before the Navy's support arrived, Orgrim had already dived into the sea and disappeared. Orgrim, does it represent Shiji's actions? Or does it mean something else? Riley murmured. But he was still confused. Finally he smiled and said with some self-deprecation, I have retired from the pirate business, why do I still care about this? As he said that, Rayleigh casually scanned the rest of the news and found that there was nothing interesting. He folded the newspaper, stuffed it into his arms, and walked towards the depths of the illegal zone. Is it on Island 13? As he walked, Rayleigh touched his chin, thinking about something. Soon, he saw a tavern on Island 13 in the lawless zone, with a very strange sign. Shakey's Rip-Off Tavern. Haha, she is still there, and she really has her character, Riley said with a smile. Xiaoqi is also a veteran pirate. He was hunted by Garp at first. Later, Xiaoqi quit and opened a tavern on the Chambord Islands. Rayleigh followed Roger and the others in and out of the New World, and naturally came to the Chambord Islands frequently. Occasionally, he found Xiaoqi here, and was surprised that this guy was no longer a pirate. Later, Rayleigh and Xiaoqi seemed to have a good conversation. However, Rayleigh and others could not stay here for a long time at that time, and the two could not express their feelings to each other. This time, after the Roger pirates were disbanded, Rayleigh's first thought was with the idea is to come to the Shampoo Islands. Come here to find Xiaoqi. Rayleigh also decided that he will not run away, but will live in the Shampoo Islands and run this tavern with Xiaoqi. After thinking about it, Rayleigh walked to the door of the tavern, then stretched out his hand, opened the door and walked in. The welcoming bell hanging on the door shook slightly and made a crisp sound. Xiaoqi, who was wiping the table, looked up at the door, then looked stunned. A smile appeared on the corner of Layli's mouth and he said, "Are you surprised?" Xiaoqi's original expression of surprise quickly dissipated and turned into a look of dissatisfaction, and then he said, "Your appearance makes me happy. I lost 20,000 belly, plus a bottle of fine wine." Ah, Riley was stunned for a moment. What the hell is this? But before he could figure out what it meant, there was a burst of laughter from the corner of the tavern. Gee ha 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 ha, let me tell you, Xiaoqi, how can you be such a charming beauty that no one cares about you? Look, this old man who doesn't cultivate has come all the way to find you. I won this bet. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 189. A man's voice came from Xiaoqi's tavern. This, of course, made Lily feel a little uncomfortable at the first moment. After all, judging by the tone of his voice, it seemed that this man was very familiar with Xiaoqi, and was not just a simple guest. Vaguely, Lily felt that he was a little green. In the days before he came to Shampoo Islands, could it be that Xiaoqi fell in love with other men? So what do I mean? Was it being greenlit, or was a third party involved? Confusing thoughts flashed through Rayleigh's mind, and soon he realized that the voice sounded familiar. Following the direction from which the sound came, Rayleigh looked towards the corner. As a result, his expression was stunned for a moment. He whispered incredulously, "Orgrim." Yes, the guy sitting in the corner at this time was none other than Kazgaro's Orgrim. He seemed to be sure that Rayleigh would come back. Same here, already sitting here waiting for him. Gee ha 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 ha, are you surprised? Orgrim asked with a laugh. Rayleigh immediately put his hand on the saber at his waist. What are you so nervous about? I'm not a navy, not to mention, you, the mighty Pluto, are you still afraid of me? Ah, by the way, now it's time to call you the right arm of the Pirate King, right? Raleigh, Sr. Orgrim looked very relaxed, holding a wine glass in his hand and asked with a smile. How will you be here? Riley frowned slightly and asked strangely. However, it seemed that Orgrim had no intention of taking action as soon as he came up. He also relaxed a little and became less alert. After all, he is a big boss. With such a posture, seems a bit embarrassing? Orgrim smiled and said, of course I came here specifically to see you, but it seems to me that I came a little early, so I will wait for you inside for a while. If you come 3 days later, God, maybe I'm ready to leave. After Orgrim left Shiji, he rushed all the way to the Shampoo Islands. He estimated that if nothing unexpected happened, Rayleigh would come to the Shampoo Islands to find Xiaoqi, the proprietress. So he was going to meet Rayleigh here and talk about something. Of course, the main purpose was not this. The main purpose was that he had made an appointment with Mihawk to meet here. That's what the guy did when he was outside for a long time. Orgrim also missed him a little. Now that the big era is coming, Orgrim also has some things he wants to do, so he called Mihawk back. Mihawk is also outside. I've been wandering around for a long time, and I haven't had much to do recently. I was thinking about whether to go back, and the contact from Orgrim came. Then the two parties directly agreed to meet at the Chambord Islands. But he hasn't come yet. Oh. This is the second time Grim and the others have landed on the Shampoo Islands. The first time, they were ambushed by the Navy without even wandering around here. If Shiki and Kaido hadn't jumped out, they might have pointed out Og. Reem has now moved into Impelton's luxurious single room. He didn't go around the island much last time, so this time, Beckman and others went to hang out. Nowadays, the Chambord Islands are relatively safe. After all, the Navy headquarters, it can be said that it is very empty. All the big guys in the Navy have gone to the New World to cause trouble. Even if Orgrim and the others are exposed, no one will come back to cause trouble for them. Orgrim was there 2 days ago. I walked around here and happened to be drinking here today when Rayleigh showed up. It seems that I came at the wrong time, Riley said with a shrug. Then he did not walk into the room, but sat on a chair at the bar. He smiled and said to Xiaoqi, give me a glass of the strongest wine. Xiaoqi smiled and poured him a glass of Rayleigh's favorite wine very naturally. Layli's eyes lit up. Sure enough, Xiaoqi still loves me. The traces of green in my heart have also faded a little. I'm curious, how did you know I would come here? Rayleigh took a sip from the wine glass, looked sideways at Orgrim and asked. Orgrim smiled, pointed at his eyes and said, perhaps, my eyes can see through the future. Rayleigh smiled and did not answer the question. It was obvious that Orgrim did not intend to answer this question. You came to me because you want to know the secret of Rafdru? Or location? Rayleigh asked softly again. Orgrim took out 2 cigars from his arms and threw one of them to Rayleigh. Rayleigh reached out and grabbed the cigar in his hand, and the two of them talked. Like a friend he hadn't seen for many years, he naturally lit the cigar and started smoking. After lighting the cigar, Rayleigh also felt a little strange. Logically speaking, he and Orgrim were not familiar with each other, so the two of them had met each other. We met twice. Once in the capital of 7 Waters and once in Sandora, the land of gold, but we didn't have much communication both times. The first time, everyone ran away from the Navy together, and the second time, they fought directly. Get up. This now, how come it is so harmonious? Slowly exhaling a puff of smoke, Orgrim asked with a smile, if I ask you, will you tell me? Riley shook his head gently, and then said, maybe next time you come, I will. I told you, but not now. Because of Roger? Orgrim raised his eyebrows and asked. Rayleigh naturally knew that Roger had his own plan. He can still hold on now, so he went to get his youth back. Waiting for Luo when Jay's body couldn't bear it anymore, Rayleigh knew very well that Roger would surrender to the Navy and use his own death to start a new era. Rayleigh didn't agree with Roger's plan, but they had no intention of stopping Roger. They had found Rafdru, but unfortunately, they went too early. In the final analysis, Rayleigh and Roger still had a very deep relationship. Since Roger had his, of course, Rayleigh had no intention of ruining his plan. Now tell Orgrim the secret of Rafdrug. What if this bastard turns around and finds Rafdrug? Then isn't Roger's plan directly sued? Maybe. Rayleigh said non-committally. Orgrim grinned and said, sure enough, you guys have other plans. Although the Roger pirates have been disbanded, are you still going to cause trouble? Ha 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 ha, Riley smiled and then said, you know, he is a restless guy. Yes, he is a restless guy. Orgrim smiled and said. Why didn't you join our Roger pirates when you wanted to know the secret of Rafdrug so much? That guy Roger is obsessed with you, Riley said with a smile. Forget it, I'm pretty good now, right? Orgrim waved his hand and said. It seems like this, lion disciples, after Shiji heard that Roger had become the pirate king, what was that guy's expression like? Riley asked curiously. Orgrim thought for a while, then said with a smile, I felt relieved but also very uncomfortable, and I felt like I couldn't vent my anger. Ha 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 ha, that guy has been chasing the throne for decades, and finally it was taken away by Roger. The relationship between the two of them is so special, it's really interesting. Riley imagined the expression of Shiji, his old enemy, and couldn't help but said with a smile. After a slight pause, Riley asked again, are you here on behalf of Shiji? No, Orgrim waved his hand and then said, I come on behalf of myself. Interesting, Riley's eyes narrowed slightly and he said. Maybe you have misunderstood something. The relationship between me and Boss Shiji is a bit complicated. It is not a simple superior-subordinate relationship. Orgrim smiled and said. In other words, are you taking advantage of each other or something? Riley asked. Almost, but not right, you can understand it this way. Orgrim said naturally. This is really beyond my expectation. Shiji would tolerate you like this, Riley said with some surprise. In his opinion, Shiji is the kind of person who is self-centered, which doesn't go well with the so-called mutual use between Orgrim. But Riley was not prepared to ask anything. Orgrim didn't intend to explain so much to him. Regardless of whether you are here for yourself or on behalf of Shiji's will, in short, I am not interested in telling you about Rafdrug for the time being. Riley thought for a while and said straight to the point. Orgrim nodded and said casually, it doesn't matter, I'm not interested in knowing the secret of Rafdrug for the time being. Rayleigh was stunned for a moment, but he didn't expect Orgrim to say such words. Orgrim's lips curled up with an evil smile, and he said, after all, you found Rafdrug, but ended up disbanding directly. This also gave me some speculation. What? Riley asked, raising his eyebrows. For example, the time is wrong. Orgrim said softly. Rayleigh's face changed slightly, and then he heard the guy continue, you guys left early. Now I know why Shiji can tolerate you, sure enough, you are very powerful, not just in terms of strength, Riley said softly. Gee ha 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 ha, Orgrim laughed and continued, if this is the case, it proves that even if I find Rafdrug and run over now, it seems to be of no use. Like you, I may have to wait for an opportunity. After a pause, Orgrim continued, instead of doing this, it is better not to know the secrets above, and then create the right time by yourself, isn't it? It may be difficult, Lila said with a hint. I am a person who likes challenges. Orgrim smiled and said confidently. Rayleigh did not answer his words, but took a sip of wine by himself, and then said, then, you know what you should know, if nothing happens. Is it time for you to leave? Does this drive people away? Orgrim smiled, then glanced at Boss Yachi, and then said with a smile, don't worry, although I am also addicted to the charm of Boss Yachi, I also know that she has already fallen in love with her. Well, I can't do anything. Rayleigh blushed and said with embarrassment, I didn't mean that. Boss Yachi was not as shy as Rayleigh. She glanced at Orgrim very naturally, and then said calmly, what a coincidence, I have no interest in a brat like you. Gee ha 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 ha, I thought I was quite attractive, Orgrim laughed. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 190. After all, Orgrim didn't spend much time in Shaky's rip-off tavern. After all, Rayleigh came all the way to find Xiaoqi to renew their relationship, so Orgrim wouldn't be so shameless as a light bulb here. Riley watched Orgrim leave the tavern very gracefully, with a somewhat confused expression on his face. The king of pirates, even if he is going to die, he will die in the hands of pirates, Riley murmured softly. These were the last words Orgrim left for him. He couldn't figure out what Orgrim meant and what he wanted to do. Did that guy know that Roger would surrender in the future? There is no doubt that if Roger really surrenders, the Navy will publicly execute him. So what does Orgrim mean? Could it be that he wanted to rob the law field? What the hell kind of operation is this? Rayleigh couldn't figure out what Orgrim was thinking and wanted to ask, but the bastard didn't say anything and just smiled mysteriously and left. It made him feel as if a cat had scratched him, itching terribly. Not leaving this time? Xia 11 suddenly asked softly, pulling Rayleigh back from his thoughts. Rayleigh also completely gave up trying to figure out the meaning of this bastard Orgrim's thoughts. Maybe this guy is just talking nonsense and tossing. What about him? Turning to look at Xiaoqi, Riley had a gentle smile on his face and said, "Well, I'm not leaving." Not long after Orgrim walked out of the tavern, the phone bug in his arms rang. When he took it out, it was Mihawk. He picked up the phone bug with a smile, and Orgrim asked reached. "Well, I'm at the port." Mihawk said still very coldly. "I'm fine now." "I'll pick you up," Orgrim said with a smile. Then the two of them hung up the phone. They turned around and walked towards the port. Orgrim was also thinking about what happened just now. As for Roger, he wanted to sacrifice himself and start the great pirate. Orgrim has no intention of stopping him despite the times. How great is this? The more chaotic the sea is, the more interesting it is for evil pirates like them. As for how many innocent people will be killed because of this? The wave that swept into this arrow was shattered into pieces by the huge waves. Is that something that a pirate like me should consider? However, as a pirate, Orgrim also felt that he had already integrated into this world. Perhaps due to the influence of the big boss Shiji, Orgrim also felt that if a hero like Roger died in the hands of the Navy, he would be a little unhappy. No matter what the reason was, Roger finally became the king of pirates. And their pirate king is going to die in humiliation on the execution table of the Navy. What the hell is going on? Even if the king of pirates is going to die, he should die in the hands of pirates, instead of being shackled, kneeling on the Navy's execution platform, and having his chest stabbed with a torture knife by two gangsters who don't even have names. A flash of fierceness flashed in Orgrim's eyes, and he said to himself. That's right, Orgrim decided to make trouble on Roger's execution platform. Of course, he didn't plan to go to the execution ground and put Roger to death. The guy saved something. Just kidding, Rayleigh and the other serious members of the Roger Pirates didn't even say they were going to save their captain. Why would an outsider like him bother with all this? What's more, Roger is it okay to take the initiative to seek death? The reason why Roger surrendered was that he was sure that the Navy would make a fuss about him, and Roger himself just needed a platform that could speak to the whole world. Of course. Orgrim didn't intend to demolish this platform. And what he wants to do is not to rob the execution ground at all, which is meaningless. What he wants is to kill Roger with his own hands on the execution platform. Just as he said. Even if the king of pirates is going to die, he will die at the hands of pirates. The door to the great pirate age is opening, and Orgrim also wants to push it. After wandering to the port, I saw Mihawk leaning on a stone pillar in the port. Behind him, a small sampan was moored. Sure enough, it's still a familiar style. Mihawk didn't change much, even his clothes didn't change much. he was still wearing a handsome little noble hat. Wearing a black trench coat mixed with burgundy, his chest was slightly exposed, and a church cross hung around his neck. Orgrim hasn't seen this little friend for a long time. The moment he saw my hawk, a smile appeared on his lips. Of course, my hawk also saw Orgrim, and his falcon-like eyes seemed more powerful and sharper. Just when Orgrim was about to say hello to him, my hawk stood up straight from the edge of the stone pillar, then raised his hand and grabbed the black knife Knight carried behind him. Orgrim's expression changed, and he was shocked. "What the hell are you going to do?" Before Orgrim could stop my hawk pulled out his black knife, Knight, from behind. Then he moved very smoothly, slashing down with the flow, and came out with a powerful slash. Headed straight for Orgrim. All the debris on the port that blocked the attack was split into two. In the blink of an eye, this powerful slash came in front of Orgrim. Orgrim's arms suddenly burst out with powerful arm-domineering energy, becoming extremely dark. Then he crossed his arms to block his chest, and heard him shout in a low voice, "Iron Piece, Black Gold." The swift slash hit Orgrim's arm, and Orgrim only felt the impact on his arm. There was a stinging pain, and the powerful force pressed Orgrim's feet into the ground paved with stones, causing cracks in the stone slabs. "Drink," Orgrim shouted low, and his arm suddenly crossed forward. My hawk's powerful slash was directly thrown into the sky by Orgrim. After another look, Orgrim's there was a cut on the arm, and some bright red blood flowed out. At the same time, my hawk's figure waved the black knife Knight, and rushed in front of Orgrim with a few quick steps, and was struck by another knife. It was cut down. Orgrim stepped on his foot, and the shave step was activated instantly, and the figure disappeared directly in front of my hawk. The next second, my hawk's black knife directly broke the ground, destroying this unlucky port. Divided into two. "What are you doing? Damn bastard!" Orgrim appeared behind my hawk and punched him without saying a word. My hawk was also very fast. He stepped lightly on his feet and spun around in half a circle. While facing Orgrim, Black Blade Knight was also blocking his chest. Orgrim's punch directly hit his black knife. My hawk felt a huge force coming from him. His feet were resisted by this huge force, and a huge force was wiped out backwards, and the stone floor was forcibly shaken. Two ravines were created. A flash, my hawk did not respond to Orgrim. With the help of this power, he opened 2 steps away from Orgrim. At the same time, the black knife in his hand also turned from defense to offense and moved towards Orgrim. Mew slashed down. This knife had already broken through my hawk's previous bottleneck. Although Orgrim saw the shadow of the knife in his eyes, the speed was too fast. This sword, without a doubt, broke through the limitations of my hawk's sword skills and reached the point where level is the secret. There was no way to hide. The moment the knife was about to hit Orgrim's chest, a flash of light suddenly flashed across Orgrim's eyes, and he shouted in a low voice, "Shenri Tianzhang." As he finished speaking, a powerful impact suddenly erupted from his body. The black sword Knight slash in my hawk's hand was hit by the impact and failed to fall down immediately. The next second, Orgrim's bull-like figure took the opportunity to rush in front of my hawk. With a low shoulder and elbow, Orgrim's figure directly hit my hawk's body, sending the guy flying away. My hawk danced twice in the air, then adjusted his posture, landed on the ground, and stepped back a few steps, leaving several deep footprints on the ground before he was able to remove Orgrim's power. He felt his insides rolling slightly, and he was hit hard by Orgrim. But he also knew that Orgrim was definitely showing mercy, but why was he not the same? After landing this time, my hawk did not make any more moves. He pulled Black Blade back and said, "You have indeed become stronger. I thought that with my experience during this period, I should be able to catch up. I'm going to fuck you, a guy who likes to keep things behind closed doors. However, it seems that the gap has become wider again." Orgrim touched the knife edge on his arm and said with a curse, even if you want to spar with me, why don't you say hello first? We haven't seen each other for a year or two. You stabbed me when we met. Are you planning to rebel? It's just the etiquette of a swordsman. Mihawk said calmly. You mean, the etiquette of a swordsman is to show off when you meet? Orgrim said helplessly. Orgrim walked up to Mihawk, and then the two of them laughed at the same time. You've become a lot stronger, you bastard. Orgrim laughed and said. Mihawk also smiled, shook his head with some regret and said, I'm still not as good as you. If you want to catch up with me, you are still 10,000 years too early, Orgrim said in a very disgusting manner. With your stinky attitude, I'm going to kill you sooner or later. Mihawk curled his lips and said. After a slight pause, Mihawk asked, does it have something to do with Roger when you asked me to come back this time? Also related to Shiji. Orgrim nodded and said. Then, he smiled again and said, let's not talk about this for now. Beckman and the others are all on the island. Go and meet them and talk about your journey during this period, we are all curious. I don't think there's much to say, it's just about challenging yourself, beyond the limits. Mihawk said calmly. Hiss, Orgrim took a breath, and then said, why do I feel that you are getting better and better at showing off?